Hello friends, and welcome to a review lesson on global winds. But before we really get back into those global winds, I want to go over some really cool experiments that we did. Alright, well, I've got my fantastic whiteboard and my markers here to make this interesting. Here we go. So remember that first experiment we did. We started with a flask. Seemingly nothing in it, right? Now you can see it. We put a funnel in the top and we added some clay around there to sort of make it airtight. Now what happened was we took some water and poured it into the funnel. But it wouldn't go in until we broke some of the clay, which would then allow the water to rush in and fill up the flask. Because at the same time as seeing nothing in there, there really was something in there. Particles of air. We learned that air occupies space, and until the air was able to escape, it was unable to let the water in. That was our first experiment to get this idea that air actually is there. Our next experiment, we used an apparatus. And that apparatus, I'm sure you remember, looked very much like this, with a big, long spike sticking out of it, and a paper spiral. What we did was we lit a candle underneath. And once that candle was lit, the particles of air started to heat up. Now, in our last experiment, we discussed that air occupies space. So as this air rose up, it caused the paper spiral to start to turn. It was pretty magical and magnificent. But that wasn't the only thing that we did. We had one more experiment to help explain this and give us that one missing piece that brings everything full circle. So, we had a chimney that looked pretty much like this. Inside again, there was a candle, so you're going to have to imagine that we can see inside there and see that candle. When we lit that candle, just like with our other experiment, the heated air started to move upward. Remember, we had a stick of incense that was sort of smoking, and we could watch that smoke travel in. But what we really were seeing was that those cooler air particles outside of the chimney were taking the space of the warmer air particles as they exited out the top of the chimney. And we related all of this with a lesson on global winds. And there's our friendly continent. Let's get some mountains in there. And of course that big, beautiful ocean. There's one thing missing from here, and that would be the sun. We very often start with the sun. And in this case, the sun is sending rays millions of miles through space to heat up the land, which causes air particles to heat up and to move up. But eventually they reach that colder area of the atmosphere and they cool down. They also have to move out of the way for the rising heated air. So out of the way as far as they can, because eventually they cool down enough that they're going to take the place of the air that's rising, and they will start to warm up and rise, and more cooler air will take its space, and we get that cyclical motion. That is the basic idea behind our global wind. So, what are you going to do with this? Well, I would love to see your idea of how this works, and maybe your picture of how this works is going to be a little bit different than mine. You could take a look at this old chart that we've been taking a look at over the last week or so, and there's a copy of this on the drive for you. You're welcome to use this as a model, but you might also want to create your own. It also doesn't have to happen globally like this. Remember that we did talk about areas where this happens. Locally, we talked about sea and land breezes. So maybe you might even want to extend your chart by showing what happens when we're facing away from the sun. Have fun, friends, and blow me away.